Green Daniel here to bring you the latest fantasy news, and let's go ahead and just structure out the show. So this one's going to be a bit weird. It's going to be the quick stories, Stephen King news, because there's a good bit of that, and finally jumping into the stories I want to really dive in deep on. So going ahead and getting the quick ones out of the way. The Dunes movie release has been delayed. I'm going to go ahead and assume this is largely due to them wanting to get the editing down perfect, because the movie's actually done filming. It was supposed to be released in November of 2020, and now that will be December. I haven't seen any announcements they will be doing any additional filming, so with what Dune is and the grand VFX it will certainly require, I am assuming this is just them wanting all of the visuals, especially under Denis Villeneuve, who is a visual mastermind, to be absolutely up to the excellent standard we expect from a major Hollywood release now. And on the note of VFX, if you haven't checked out the VFX Artists React series that is currently happening on YouTube, I highly recommend you do. I'll go ahead and link to their channel down below. Really fun to see some people who are inside the industry give their opinions on some good and bad CGI that we all, let's be honest, we all have seen and enjoyed or disliked. Do you hear the siren in the background? Could people not schedule their emergencies around my recording? I'd really appreciate it. Next up, we have that N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy is going to be adapted into an RPG, and this is the kind of fantasy news I am most looking forward to right now. We are getting so many TV shows and movies and prequel comics and things like that. Seeing an RPG being made for a book series that certainly earns it is just exciting because it stands out. It's not going to be obviously washed away in the deluge coming down the road, and this series is certainly of a quality where I see an RPG not only being something that could be done, but should be done, and I hope represents the brilliant source material very well. Honestly now, like anything aside from a TV show and a movie, I will be more excited for pretty much by default, just because oh my god, I can't watch all of these shows. Speaking of spin-off things and adaptations, the Star Trek Picard TV show, even though it has not to be released yet or reviewed critically by anyone, is going to be getting a prequel comic and book. Sorry, prequels, comics and books. They're not telling the same story. I don't really feel the need to dive in deep in this one. It's another big show that they're trying to get more people hyped for and more publicity from also just adding more written material too. I highly doubt Picard is going to blow people out of the water at this point, especially after seeing certain things about it, and the trailer did not get me hyped. It seems like they're going the action route again for Star Trek. Personally, not a fan of that. And transitioning into some brief Stephen King news. Apparently, Stephen King has requested a completely new scene be added to It Chapter 2, which is interesting. Stephen King has interfered with adaptations of his work in the past, to varied results, honestly. Some of them have been spectacular, some of the best movies ever made. Multiple Stephen King stories have been adapted and put easily in the top 50 movies of all time. Looking at you, The Shining, The Shawshank Redemption, Misery, and The Green Mile. And I'm very curious to see what this new scene will be. Will it be some form of substitute for the very controversial ending of It? Possibly. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Don't quote me on that. That was purely speculation, but one that I'd like to see discussed in the comments down below. And while you're down there, go ahead and leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. It helps me in the algorithm. I gotta be a hoe on YouTube to thrive. And there's also the Amazon affiliate link if you want to do any purchases of any books I've reviewed here on the channel. I will have all of the books linked in the affiliate page down there, and you support the channel here and it costs you nothing. And in additional Stephen King adaptation news, Stephen King put out on his Twitter that he wrote the final episode of the upcoming CBS All Access The Stand adaptation. And he specifically said, and I quote, "Because that final story has been in my mind for 30 years. Hinting that we're going to be getting something very new, very different, a after the main story for The Stand. I'm definitely curious. He's one of the most, he's goddamn Stephen King. What else can I say? I'm always curious what this guy wants to do. And now moving into the stories I want to dive a little deeper on. Fantastic Beasts 3 has announced some additional casting and will actually be released in November of 2021. I am very confused by these Fantastic Beasts movies. I thought the first one was okay, which when compared to the original Harry Potter movies is disappointing. The second one was a step down from okay, yet I'm still seeing a ton of hype online for the third one, not even addressing the controversies that are existing around the existing casting, which I'm not going to get into here, although they did say that Johnny Depp is expected to return. But on the topic of the actual movies, I'm just really hoping that we see a return to the spectacle we saw in the original Harry Potter movies. Maybe the story could actually live up to that. I'm hoping, though, with the lack of ability for the story to focus on any kind of compelling narrative that I felt was worthy of an entry in the Harry Potter world, my hopes are not that high, especially with the active backtracking of choices that were done in the first movie. Moving on to the next story we're going to be covering here today, and that will be the casting for Cortana for the upcoming Halo TV series has been announced. The actress's name is Natasha McElhone. I'm pretty sure I messed that up, but she has a rather impressive resume, and I am very looking forward to seeing her in the role of Cortana. That being said, my Halo fans out there, I have not done a good job of representing you here on the channel. I'm a mild, I would say at best, Halo fan. I stopped playing after 2, and I've respected what it did for video games, but I have not ever dived deep into the lore. I know people are going to bring up the books now. I've read one of them a long time ago, didn't love it, so that's probably not in the future of the channel. But are you hopeful about a Halo TV series with the amount of resources that are currently going into TV shows in the fantasy genre? I was originally very skeptical, especially with the claims that it's going to be on the scale and scope of Game of Thrones, but I was corrected by a friend of mine who actually is quite knowledgeable about Halo, telling me that no, there is a very good amount of lore there, and it could be something truly epic. This would be very different than almost any other sci-fi fantasy adaptation coming down the road because of the immense epic scope of it, the more wartime setting, and the fact that it's pulling from such an established, well-known world in pop culture. A lot of the other sci-fi adaptations are coming from things that are either really old and not super well known anymore, which is sad for many cases, but unfortunately is true, and is definitely going to be more action-packed than 99.9% of any sci-fi adaptations ever. It's definitely suffering from modern sci-fi-itis and not pulling from the classic roots really at all, but I don't fault it for that. It's okay to be a sci-fi war epic. That's what it is, and that's great. But we haven't ever, in my mind, seen that done on the small screen especially well. So are you actually thinking we could get a Game of Thrones early seasons level of Halo adaptation, or are you already fairly confident this will be a case of crash and burn, especially with the history of Halo trying and failing quite harshly in being adapted, with either studios backing out or just the entire creative process completely falling apart? There's a whole video that could be done here, but I'm honestly just very curious what the Halo fans out there think, and I want to see your thoughts in the comments down below, because I think I'll be reading through them quite carefully, and I'm honestly kind of driven to get back into Halo now. I don't know why. I haven't been in ages. I don't want to pick up the new game. I just want to pick up like the old remastered one and play it. That'll be fun. Brandon Sanderson confirmed and gave a couple additional details about the upcoming TV show he is working on, and we're going to go over them now. In a post on the r/fantasy subreddit mentioning the upcoming adaptation with Brandon Sanderson, Brandon replied, "Hey, sorry I've been slow to reply to this thread. This is Dark One, the story I've talked about for years, and which I think I finally cracked open how to do a few summers ago. I wrote what I think is a pretty solid outline, but it was obvious to me it was paced more like a television show than a novel. Basic premise is that a guy from our world finds out that a fantasy world has prophesized he'll become the next Dark One of their world. So they decide to assassinate him before that can happen. It's been fun to do the work with Joe. He's quite the character. We did pitches for this early in the spring and got some good reactions and some nibbles from Hollywood. That's about all I can say now, unfortunately, but hope Joe will be writing up a pilot soon and we can see where that takes us." The biggest thing to take away from this is that yes, this is an extraordinary early development, could totally drop away. A pilot has not even been written yet. Only the premise has been pitched around in Hollywood. So it might be a bit early to really hype this up and report on it strongly, and I apologize if I did that too early on in the previous video. I was just extremely excited and very willing to believe that Brandon Sanderson material will be adapted because holy crap, oh my god, of course that's a good idea. Give me a Mistborn video game. But I will link to a post where Brandon has explored more on this Dark One idea in the description down below, and hit like while you're down there, why not? And let's go ahead and move into the final story we will be covering here on Fantasy News. A script from season Season 8 of Game of Thrones has leaked. Now, there's been some false leaks here as well, but one episode has had a confirmed leak of its script. A lot of the times, scripts for TV shows and movies do eventually get released, but it's rare for this early on. But one script is for sure right because it was sent to the awards to be reviewed, and then from there, it did get put out. So we as fans have one script from Season 8 of Game of Thrones, and wow, comparing it to scripts from Season 1 is, holy God, shocking. There are things done and said that make no sense. I cannot imagine how many things went just horribly debated in the writer's room, and clearly some awful decisions were made. I don't know who did that, but let's just go ahead and as fans just revel in the failing geography reference. That's a thing that's said seriously in the script. It's funny to me how I was initially kind of hesitant to buy into this whole hate on the showrunners and was more just like pushing back on this idea, like, come on, y'all. I'm sure it was more of a, no, all evidence points to these two people just riding this show into the ground as quickly as possible so that they can get on to what they consider bigger, better things, aka Star Wars. This has gone from just rumors to now rumors with very substantial evidence and a whole lot of breadcrumbs and pissed off actors and other people involved with the show. Honestly, those I feel most sorry for are the VFX artists who had to spend hundreds of man-hours making stunning visual effects to tell such a mediocre story. And as with many VFX artists in the industry, they still do not get the credit they deserve. I hope they at least get an Emmy for their work. Yes, there are some Emmys that Season 8 still deserves for the actual just visuals and things like that. And the score. The score is still great. Anyway, on that depressing note is where we're going to end this episode of Fantasy News. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. I'm sorry for missing a couple videos this last week. I actually just had family visiting, and I hadn't seen them in a while and I wanted to spend time with them. Or Daniel Green, that joke, had family visiting. So like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here and Fantasy News as a whole, as well as get a couple short stories from Daniel Green posted within the next coming month. And have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I want to record a special shout out to Michael Gonzalez, a name I'm certainly not going to screw up because I knew someone with that exact name growing up. So thank you for supporting the channel and being a high tier Patreon. You are in for a treat because things on Patreon should be cranking up in the coming months. I'm excited. Are you excited? I'm excited. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.